And now for the reaction from the opposition. I'm joined by Shadow Assistant Treasurer, Senator Mathias Cormann, joining me from our Sky Canberra studio. Welcome, Senator.
Good to be back.
Now, I gather in just the last few minutes you've already lost round one. The House did pass the school kids bonus, right?
Well, I mean, this is a government, of course, that has a track record of treating taxpayers' money with complete disregard. This is a government that has got absolutely no shame when it comes to spending taxpayers' dollars as fast as possible.
I understand that, but I just wanted to check. The school kids bonus has gone through. Where does that leave you now on your position on it?
Well, I take your word for it. I've just walked straight up from the Senate chamber where the government, of course, has been moving a guillotine in order to ram that particular school kids bonus legislation through the Senate tomorrow, which really is quite extraordinary because normally budget measures get subjected to appropriate and proper parliamentary scrutiny, but this government clearly is embarrassed by what they're doing, and they're so desperate to get the cash out of the door as fast as possible that they're doing away with even the most basic parliamentary scrutiny procedures.
Well, they certainly do seem to be in a rush. If it has passed the House, as we understand, sitting on the Senate, what do you think? What are the politics of it now? Can you actually prevent it? You can't. You don't have the numbers, do you?
Well, I mean, the politics of it are that the Labor Party and the Greens, of course, have a majority on the floor of the Senate. They've just passed a motion tonight to guillotine the debate. By lunchtime tomorrow, by 2 o'clock tomorrow, it'll probably get through the Parliament. I mean, that is, of course, a very bad way of dealing with budget measures that are being put forward by the government.
Of course, nothing surprises anyone these days, Senator. But so moving on from that, to say that it does go through, where does that leave your attack now? What are your priorities in this budget of what you will be trying to stop, trying to repeal? What is the main thrust of your agenda now for the coalition?
Well, I mean, what we're concerned about with this budget is that it does nothing to strengthen the economy while we are facing serious economic storm clouds on the global horizon. It doesn't cut spending. It does not cut spending. It increases taxes. It of course, seeks to lift the debt ceiling yet again to $300 billion. And, of course, it also imposes the world's largest carbon tax. I mean, our focus from the coalition's point of view is that we think that we need a more consistent economic strategy, one that is focused on strengthening our economy, on improving productivity growth again, and on making us more competitive internationally rather than less competitive internationally.
I know this is a long shot, but are there any things in this budget you would say are good, like the tax carryback for small business, which was recommended in Henry, money to education, health, the dental health fund?
Well, this carryback is actually something the coalition recommended in 2009 as an appropriate response to the global financial crisis. And, but the government at the time said that it was a terrible thing, and it was going to cost too much money, it was going to be inefficient. And of course we know that
Senator, in the interest of hands across the Parliament, it doesn't matter who said what or whose it was first, then you think this will be a good thing then?
Well, I mean, with the government, the matter is it's always important with this government, which has got a very heavy track record of incompetence and mismanagement. You've always got to look at the detail, and you've always got to make sure that they've thought through all of the ins and outs of what they're putting on the table. So we will do what we normally do after a budget is put down. We will go into Senate estimates and ask questions about what is being done, why it's being done, what the detail is behind some of the thinking, to make sure that the government has crossed all of the I's and all of the I's and crossed all the T's. That is an important part of our job.
No, I understand that, but the question was about the proposal. I'm assuming, given that you say it was your idea first, then you will support it. It's a good thing, you would agree?
Well, it is a good thing in principle, but it's going to be important to actually check and assess that the way the government is doing it is the right way. With this government, you can't take that at face value.
Okay, I'm going to throw you one. All the news are running tonight when the coalition line today, the talking point is that, this is just cash giveaways, it's bribes. A question was put to your leader, Tony Abbott, that what's the difference between this and John Howard's baby bonus? His answer was, they just are different. Do you have a better explanation of why it's different?
Well, I mean, the reason it's different is because the government is trying to push this out of the door in absolutely outrageous haste. The government is, I mean, this is, you've got to remember this. I mean, when the Howard government introduced the baby bonus, we did that from a position of economic and fiscal strength. We had our budget in surplus. We had, of course, paid back Labour's debt. Well, no, actually they don't. This government is borrowing money they're borrowing money that they haven't got to give it away. And in fact, this is part of the $44.4 billion deficit this financial year. Because what you've got to remember is that they're actually shifting spending from 2012-13 into 2011-12 just to preserve the illusion of a surplus next financial year. Well, I've got some news for the Labour Party.
This will be rushed through in this financial year.
Well, I have some news for the Labour Party.
Yeah.
Shifting spending from next year to this year is not a spending cut next year. It is cooking the books.
Okay, I'll take your word on that. And you are right. Obviously, I was wrong on that, saying it's a surplus. You're right. They're pushing it through at the moment as we see it getting through. Senator Cormann, I have another question for you. Much of the debate centred very quickly on what the coalition would do, how you're going to match this, what your economic policy is going to look like, what your budget would look like. Joe Hockey and others have said that, you know, wait till the election, that's when you'll see our figures, and trying to put the focus back on the government, quite rightly. But there is one question, as we've seen in the voting, that Craig Thompson, Peter Slipper, things are now so precarious, Senator Cormann, an election could be at any moment. Can you tell me, is the economic team of the coalition currently working on those numbers? Are you planning? I mean, it's all very well to say when the election comes we'll have it, but are you having meetings now to work it out? Should an election be called suddenly?
Well, if there was an election called suddenly, that would be a good thing for our country, because our country deserves better than this bad, this weak, this incompetent, this divided and deeply dysfunctional government. And the answer to your question is yes. I mean, we've been meeting for some time now with our Expenditure Review Committee, going through the budget line by line, identifying labour waste and opportunities for savings. And of course, the budget that was brought down last night now needs to go into that process. We've now got to sit back and go through a responsible, methodical process, making judgments on where the situation is at right now. But if there was an election called tomorrow, we would be ready. And of course, we would then release all of the costings and all of the policies that we would commit to deliver in government. Which
is a great relief, given my last question is going to be something you mentioned and I've mentioned, the worsening, the deteriorating situation in Europe. Forget about this government, on the basis that most people think you're going to be the government when this is hitting. What does that do for your bottom line? What does that do? I mean, that must be, for someone in your position as Assistant Treasurer, it must be quite frightening to think that you might have to face GFC Mark II.
Well, I mean, Labor's wasteful and reckless spending over the last 4 years has certainly put Australia into a weaker position in the context of any future global challenges that we might face, and certainly the developments in Europe on the weekend with a high-taxing, high-spending socialist president elected in France, and with the developments in Greece. I mean, there certainly is quite a bit of concern about how the situation in Europe might develop in the weeks and months ahead. And Australia, our budget position in Australia and our situation as an economy is weaker than what it should have been and what it could have been if the government had been more careful with the way it manages money.
Well, thank you for that, Senator. I know you have to go, but at least we know you are on the case currently should anything happen and an election comes up. Thanks very much for talking to us tonight.
I'll be back.
You will. Senator Mathias Cormann with the sense of humour there. Time for a short break, and then I'll return to hear from the other side of politics.